should the Giants bring in another quarterback? And those of you guys watching on video, I know we kind of giving it away here potentially and who we might be talking about as a guy to bring in. It may shock you and who it is when we get to him.
But you guys podcast land.
Yes, you might be a little less confused. But yeah, let's look at the best available. And I looked at try to see it. I looked at a couple websites and it literally just Googled best quarterback still available. Here's what we came up with. Here's the list. Trevor Siemian. I think we can all agree he's trash. Right? Trash. Absolute trash. Blaine Gabbert. Blaine Gabbert is, yeah, we've already seen what he can do as a starting quarterback. He just isn't the guy. AJ McCarron, who kind of has refueled his career, so to speak, in the UFL for the St. Louis Battlehawks, I believe is the name of the team. But 34 years old at this point. We've seen him not do great things in the NFL throughout a long career. Let's just say this way. When the greatest asset that AJ McCarron brings to a club is Catherine Webb, his wife, that's not good.
That's terrible.
Listen, he's always going to be known for that college game when the announcer couldn't stop staring at his then girlfriend, now wife.
Yeah.
Remember that? Oh my God, that was hilarious. That was like 10
what was
years
that? Was it
now.
basketball?
What?
Baseball, when they talk about the cheerleaders.
Oh yeah.
But they were like,
yeah, but this was like legit, like, and it was a big game too. It was like, oh,
how does he have such a hot wife?
Yeah, it basically was. I mean, let's be honest, that's basically what it was. I mean, she was was she like Miss Alabama 2012 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Anyway, then we have Brian Hoyer, 38 years old, and looked absolutely horrible in Vegas. Like, literally, I think his completion percentage was like below half. It was horrendous. You got PJ Walker, had a 48% completion percentage last season with 1 touchdown and 5 interceptions. You got the guy that I'm interested in as a potential, if we were to look outside.
I mean,
but
just to give a little more suspense of people out there in podcast land, I mean, we may have talked about the Giants like being like this team
coming out
seasons ago. It's Brett Favre leaving Mary's house.
Pay back the people of Mississippi somehow.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. After Mary took his money.
Yeah.
Because it didn't end so well for Ben Stiller.
But I mean, I get where a lot of people are like, "Whoa, really? Ryan Tannehill?" Because that's who we're talking about. I guess is the guy. Like, I get where at first you go, "Is he better?" And I gotta say it. I think he's got the potential, and I think this is a guy that if you're scared at all about the medical, that's when you make that call immediately.
Correct. I was about to say.
He's sitting at home. This is the worst quarterback room in the entire NFL.
We talked several times about how DJ looks like Tannehill. Plug one in for the other that has a little more experience that stays healthy on the field.
Except for the last couple of years, but yeah.
Yeah, well.
He's had injuries the last couple of years, but I mean, most part prior to that. But he's also like 35 years old at this point.
Correct.
I got to write down his age. He's getting his upper 30s here at this point. Yeah, it's 35. He'll be 36 when the season starts.
Yeah, I mean,
I look at what he did the last couple of years. So listen, guys, it's not great. I'm not going to sit there and say this is. If it was great, he wouldn't be available. Let's throw that out there right now.
Correct.
This past season, he had 10 games, 8 starts, a 64.8 completion percentage, 1,616 yards, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Not very good. Now, I warned you guys earlier that I'm gonna have a scenario where I'm gonna say if we took 2 games out, this is a much better season. This is the guy. So he had 2 games that he looked like absolute trash. And that was against the Saints and the Ravens, which obviously the Ravens made a lot of teams look like trash. Let's be very frank on that.
Yeah.
But in those 2 games, he was a combined 24 of 50, obviously right below 50%, 264 yards. It's very low for 2 games. That's like lower than Daniel Jones low. No touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So if you do other games that he threw a pass, because one of the 10 games he was in, he didn't even throw a pass. He just kind of popped in, handed the ball off a couple times, and went back out again. The 7 games that he actually threw a pass, besides those 2 bad games, he was 125 of 180, which is a 69.4 completion percentage, 1,352 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Now, Rob knows I love to do the math. I don't know why I do. I really hate math. It just makes me understand better what kind of. It makes me understand better because I'm used to looking at final numbers at the end of the season.
I was about to say you're looking at the
So in those 7 games, if you divide by 7 times it by 17, which gives you the numbers of what they would have been if that was a complete season, that would have been 3,283 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's not a great season by any stretch of the imagination. But if you think Daniel Jones is not going to be healthy, and you don't have confidence in Drew Lock like I don't, this is a guy that I would make the call to.
You get him on the cheap because he's sitting at home.
And he's so old that you don't have to worry about him like wanting the job permanently. It's just a matter of him trying to go there and be a rental for a year, basically.
Look at Joe Flacco last year. He was popping Pringles in his mom's basement.
Yep.
And he got the call. I don't know why he was at his mom's house. He made plenty of money where he has his own place.
I mean, I think also you got to look at what they had last season for help. They had absolutely horrendous offensive line last year for the Titans. Yep. I know, obviously we did. Don't get me wrong. But absolutely horrendous. Then they go ahead.
Derrick Henry wasn't King Henry, but he produced, but like he wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at a perspective of, I was going to say the weapons they had to throw to. It wasn't exactly great weapons. So you got obviously DeAndre Hopkins, who wasn't exactly his old self. His age was definitely, I think, showing.
Without steroids.
He had 1,000 yards, but for him, that's nothing. It just wasn't the greatest. I mean, they didn't have a lot of depth, guys. You go past DeAndre Hopkins, who do they really have? There's a reason they went out and got Calvin Ridley this year in the offseason. Because they didn't really have much. I mean, they went ahead and, they got Treylon Burks, obviously, in the draft. He's 221 yards last year, guys. That's what he had. I wouldn't call that stellar.
No.
They got a good young tight end whose name I will probably mispronounce. Had, Okonkwo, I believe is how you pronounce the last name I remember correctly. I usually look it up. I wasn't planning on talking about him, but in this whole thing. But I mean, he had 500 yards as a tight end last year. So he was really their second option. But again, you can't sit there and say he had a great team around him. This was a rebuilding crappy year for them.
And let's also not forget, this offense is an old school offense. It's not about throwing the football downfield. It's more about how do we get the running back the most amount of yards he can get per play.
Yes. Now, I did
that's way a lot.
I did for shits and giggles look at 22 numbers for him as well. 12 games, 12 starts, 65.2 completion percentage, 2,536 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Remember, he got hurt at the end of the year. And he saw the team go and drop off the face of the earth. They lost, I think 6 games. Was it 6 games in a row?
I don't think it was that high, but it was close.
It was bad. Like they went from like in control of the division to lost the division the last week.
Yeah,
if that was a
Jaguars
17, if that was a 17-week season, hypothetically, because he was hurt for those obviously, it would have been 3,593 yards, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Again, not stellar. I'm not trying to say he's a Pro Bowl caliber guy. Again, he'd be picked up by somebody else. I just wonder, depending on what you're concerned about, because let's say hypothetically he costs you $10 million and you got to restructure someone's deal to make that $10 million because you'd have to, but you easily could. Is it worth to spend $10 million on Ryan Tannehill to avoid spending $27 million additional next year for Daniel Jones? That's the question.
Correct.
Because as much as I talked earlier, good-ish about Daniel Jones.
For you, yeah, it's good.
He's a much better quarterback than Drew Lock. I'm not so sure he's a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. I think at this point in their careers, they're kind of similar level-wise.
You're not wrong.
Tannehill's got a better career, but at this point in his career, at 36 years old. And again, you get him for 1 year. You can cut Daniel Jones loose at the end of the year. And you just do whatever you have to do next year to get a quarterback. I don't care what it is. But I don't, because that's your big hole. That's what your big weakness is. You know, if you got to take 2 or 3 first-round picks to go get the quarterback you want, you do it. Because that's your spot. That's what you need. The team should be built up around him. Good receivers. Maybe get a running back next year. It's the one spot where I think we're still a little light on. Better offensive line. Defense. We got to see what happens with our new coordinator, obviously, but you got a couple pass rushers now. You got some young pieces in the secondary. You got a stud at linebacker. Quarterback's the issue. And as always, Giant fans,
go G-Man! Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support.
Thanks so much.